proper mix of starter elements, the right aeration, managing it for the right temperature, could reduce 1,500-pound steer into totally clean, usable, nutritionally rich soil in about a few months. They ran some tests, a research program at Washington State University with human remains, people who were terminally ill and supported the project and wanted to donate their remains to the research, and found that using a similar process, human bodies could become that kind of clean, rich soil in about 4 weeks.
Wow.
So the process of, yeah, it is pretty quick, and that's bones and all. It requires, again, the right starter elements, the right aeration to keep the microbes happy. And it's, relatively speaking, less odorous than people would think. If the microbes are really happy and working really efficiently, they do their work quickly, and they don't produce a lot of that off-gas odor that we associate with something rotten.
Because that was one of my questions. Well, what about the bones? Obviously, they're tough to break down, so I didn't know that even in that short of time, 4 weeks, it's pretty quick. The bones go with it, too.
Quick. Yeah, and again, it's a little different than just a green burial where you dig a hole and you lay someone in and just a cloth shroud or something. That process of decomposition takes longer because the conditions are different. But if you have the right temperature, the right moisture, the right starter elements, the process moves pretty fast.
Now, traditional ways of disposing of a body, cremation usually burns 2 full SUV tanks worth of gas. They say that it emits 250,000 tons of carbon into the atmosphere each year. Traditional barriers, the body is pumped full of embalming fluid, obviously caskets. All of these measures slowly decompose the body, and it produces a lot of methane gas, things like that. The traditional ways environmentally are not necessarily the best. Was this bill introduced specifically to address some of those issues?
It was, and it was one of the founder Katrina Spade's main visions. She grew up in a farm in New Hampshire. Her father's a hired physician. Mother was a physician's assistant, an environmental activist. So familiarity with life, death, composting, new growth plants and animals, and that was all part of her childhood coming up. And when she was studying architecture, she was thinking about death modalities, what we use to deal with human remains, and wondered if something more farm-like might be good, both environmentally and to people's taste. If people don't want to spend a lot of money on varnished caskets, lined with expensive cloths, and the embalming process, and all that kind of thing. So this is Katrina's vision, and the state senators and the governor agreed. It was a simpler, less expensive, less complicated, more natural, more environmentally friendly option for people's remains after they pass away.
Katrina Spade, so she's the developer of the Urban Death Project. Is she the one behind this Recompose company who's going to be building kind of these new burial plots for this?
That's right. Katrina Spade started a nonprofit called the Urban Death Project, I think around 2014, and began the process of talking to scientists and attorneys and death care experts from around the country, a lot on the West Coast, and formed a board, and they moved into a for-profit model, a small business model, to have Recompose. And now that the legislation's passed and the governor has signed it, the next step is for them to develop the rules necessary, the Department of Licensing, all that kind of stuff, and find a site and start building.
When people get cremated, oftentimes they spread the ashes, maybe in their loved one's favorite place. Loved ones are allowed to keep this soil that is made. A body would create about 2 wheelbarrows full of soil, and you can take it to a home garden, wherever you want to put it. Plant a tree, plant vegetables. So that's kind of a cool notion to breathe life out of somebody's passing as well.
Well, that's absolutely the case, and part of the attraction behind it. And I spoke to one older gentleman who's a big supporter of this from Eastern Washington. He's been a career nurse all his life, working in intensive cardiac care units. His vision is to have a memorial tree, something that you could hang a swing on, and maybe grandkids or great-grandkids down the line could swing on, and have his body become nourishment for that tree itself. It would be a living testament to him as opposed to a headstone in a cemetery.
Now the next step is, I guess, to see if other states will propose similar bills and see how this takes off across the country.
I mean, it sounds like there's some interest bubbling up, maybe a little bit in Massachusetts, a little bit in Michigan. Joshua Slocum of the Funeral Consumers Alliance out of New England certainly knows about this and is following this. People are quite interested, and this is a relatively simple, viable alternative to what we've done in the past.
Brendan Kiley, reporter at the Seattle Times, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
One of the other top political stories of the week are the increased tensions in Iran. President Trump warned Iran not to threaten the U.S. again or it will face its quote-unquote official end. That happened shortly after a rocket landed near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Iran quickly responded with a hashtag saying never threaten an Iranian. The U.S. deployed bombers and an aircraft carrier to the area, and Iran has increased its uranium enrichment production. We spoke to Nahal Tusi, foreign affairs correspondent at Politico, for more on these rising tensions.
There's this tense kind of back and forth right now between the Iranian leaders and President Trump on his Twitter feed. And it's very strange because President Trump recently has been trying to calm things down. He has said things like, I want Iran to call me. I just want to talk to them. He has flat out said he does not want to go to war with Iran. And yet he puts out this threat out there. And maybe it's because he was sitting there thinking, you know what, I need to be tough again. I can't seem like I'm coming across as too soft. But when you say something like, this is going to be the official end of Iran, that's a pretty loaded statement. And it actually offends a lot of Iranians, including like ordinary Iranians, that the Trump